Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Laredo Independent School District Board of Trustees Board Workshop. We're meeting in October 29th. It is now 5:30 at the Amber Uri Boardroom. Roll call, Mr. Valdez.
Okay, Jesus Martinez,
Present.
Jose Valdez is here, Ricardo Garza, Hector Noyola, Dr. Cecilia May Moreno, Mr. Hector Garcia, and Mr. Jose R. Perez.
Wonderful, okay.
Okay.
Okay. Will you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Okay, vamos a ver.
Item number 1, Dr. Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, members of the board. Item number 1 is discussion and presentation on district-wide playground canopy needs. Members of the board, technically, you're going to hear that we probably need to stop referring to what we're about to talk about as canopies, because we've already had conversations with the board about canopies. We've done almost, I want to say, over $1 million in canopies over time. And what we're talking about in this agenda item is not a canopy in that respect. It's really a playground shade structure. And so we'll get into that a little bit more, but it's basically, I had a conversation with one of our trustees, and that trustee asked me to look into what it would cost to provide playground shade structures at every playground we currently have that is uncovered. You know, Mr. Valdez, I know I don't have to put the words in your mouth, but he spoke to this in open session, and this is a follow-up to that request. So what you have on page 2 of our presentation is an overview of what we show as all of our canopy needs, playground shade structure needs. I actually visited with another trustee today, Mr. Perez, and he brought up a couple of other areas. So in the event the board was to provide funding for this initiative, then we probably do need to get a real good understanding of exactly what we're talking about, and if there's any areas that kids frequent and need shade. I believe that's the intent of the agenda item, is to protect kids from the hot sun in the spring and the summer. So I won't go over all of these, but basically you have a chart that says yes or no, and it has the schools listed. Some of them are in the process of getting a shaded playground. So I'll stop at this time and allow comments or questions from the
Okay,
board.
Mr. Valdez.
No, just a quick comment here. Even though I discussed this with Dr. Nelson and with other board members, I want to make it very clear that this is a request from teachers and parents. It's not something that I dreamed up. And you also included the chips. Okay.
Yes, we'll get to that.
In other words, the teachers are very excited about us discussing this matter.
Yes,
and that's
sir.
at 3 schools over where I live. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. President. So on pages...
Just a minute. Ms. Noyola?
On the shades, I would like to see a couple of 2 or 3 different options and the type of shade that you would like to provide for these playgrounds.
Could you clarify a little bit, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, different types of shades that
Is it canvas or is it metal or
material.
plastic? What
right.
materials?
Okay.
We can also explore the cost of metal canopy, if that's the wish of the board. Technically, the materials are pretty much standard. We can have different shapes depending on the location of the site. Sometimes it's like cantilevered into the area. Sometimes you can have columns in all 4 corners. Depending on the situation, is the type of solution that we can provide. And,
Like some of the city parks have beautiful shades,
Yes.
and I would like to see what would be the cost of some of those shades.
Yes, sir.
Maybe
We have
we can,
some samples, some pictures, maybe is what you're looking for on the presentation, maybe you.
So if we can go on pages 2 and 3, we'll come right back to that, Mr. Noyola, just give us a second. On pages 2 and 3, what you see is an overview of the playground needs that we show. So you can look into that more. Mr. Pettis brought up a couple of areas that we probably need to go back and double check. One of them was an early childhood wing over at Santo Niño. I know we're getting a new early childhood renovation, but Mr. Pettis' comments were, does it get a shade structure with the renovation? So that's definitely something we can check into. I don't have my notes in front of me, Mr. Pettis, but I know you mentioned another place as well, but I have it in my notes.
The playground on the,
At Santo Niño,
right, on the south
Yes.
side, right?
yes.
It's a big playground.
So
Yeah, that one is getting a shade.
That's getting a
as we
shade,
speak
so-
right now, yeah.
if you turn on slide 4 for the public, for the board, you start to get into some cost estimates. Now, what we did not provide in this presentation, and we will bring a detailed response to Trustee Noyola's concern, because we don't really talk about the type of material it is. We just basically are estimating, depending on size, approximately $35,800 for a shade structure. Some will need to be a little bit bigger, depending on the playground. Some will need to be a little bit smaller. I'm not sure what material that is, Mr. Noyola, but we'll include options that are concurrent with their estimated cost.
what would be the lifespan of these shades?
Yes, that's the problem.
That should be 10 to 12 years, based on the specifications from the manufacturer,
Guaranteed,
guaranteed, yeah.
even if they throw some bricks on top of it and...
No, that would be like more like vandalism, but like normal wear and tear would be 10 to 12 years.
No, los matan a los...
On the sites that I'm talking about, I would rather have metal. I think it's more durable for,
I agree with that.
right.
Yeah, I think most of us agree with that. Yes.
Now, I don't think the city has them all metal, do they?
Yes.
Well,
Well, the
all
one
of
in
them.
McPherson, I believe is metal.
Oh, okay. That hillside area, yeah, that
Yes.
park,
The
okay.
basketball courts, yeah.
Okay,
Maybe,
that obviously changes the price.
maybe we could partner with the city of Laredo and fence out the playground so after school, everybody can use it.
That's something we can pursue, definitely.
Mr. Valdez?
But that would be on after school. Say, like, for example, in Santa Maria or in Farias. In Farias, we could go to the Boys Club, but I don't believe you have shades outside, right?
No.
Okay, so they wouldn't have a place there. But in other words, we need to have those in school. We can still partner with the city right, on other cases, pero en eso, we've got to cover this. Another thing is, some of the teachers there told me that it would be wise, for example, like in Santa Maria, to have maybe a canvas roll out to cover the sun in certain hours. ¿Ya me entiendes cómo? You don't need to have the canvas cover everything, but you can have it roll out, and cover the sun for about 2-3 hours when the children are there. And the children are going to play whether it's 110 or 120 degrees, but they're going to be sweating, and then again, there's a danger. So the issue here is not, it's more than recreational. The issue here is a health issue.
Yes, sir.
That's my point.
So if you look at pages 4 and 5, what you see is samples. Now, based on the feedback we've received from the board thus far, obviously we'll go add some metal samples and examples and a cost analysis of that as well. Mr. President, you want to recognize Trustee Garcia?
Yeah, Mr. Garcia is now present. Just came in.
So the other thing we wanted to talk to the trustees about on this particular agenda item number 1, is what we call safety cushion. What we've done in the past, the most recent past, is when we've added playgrounds, we have filled the floor of the playground with what plant facilities refer to, or construction services refers to as wood chips. And that has created a hardship for some of our campuses. And so on page 6, we would like to show you a brief cost analysis on what the options are to alleviate and remove all the wood chips and replace them with what is referred to as loose rubber chips or poured rubber surface. Obviously, rubber chips are extremely cheaper than to lay a full rubber surface on every playground. So that's that brief, and really it brings us to summarize this agenda item and allow for feedback from the board. You basically have $716,900 approximately. I mean, we got a whole new assignment at this meeting on metal, so that would be a different cost, but on what we've prepared tonight, $716,000. And then if we went with the rubber chips as opposed to a rubber surface, we're allocating approximately $216,000 for a total of $932,000 to get shade structures over all our playgrounds and to remove wood chips everywhere we have them and replace them with rubber chips. So obviously the cost would change when we go answer the concerns so far, but this is just an impetus for our discussion. Mr. President, members of the board,
Mr.
any
Garcia?
comments?
You know what, Mr. Martinez, the only problem I have with rubber, with the chips, that any kind of rain is going to wash them away, and we're going to have to replace them. Wash them away. I'd rather that you all look at actually doing a rubber matting or a solid something.
Surface.
So if it rains, you don't have to, you know what, a year from now, we're replacing it with another $10,000 of chip because they ran away, or they could pick them up and throw them at each other, or it becomes a trying to keep them away from the kids' hand and all that. When we put a matting, it's safer, and you don't have to worry about that. I think it lasts longer too.
What are rubber chips?
What are they?
Chips out of rubber.
They are chips made of rubber. I don't mean that disrespectfully. Mr. Velasquez, you want to speak to the specifics of that?
Yeah, it's basically like crushed material is rubber that is, specifically designed for that purpose. And it's pretty similar to the ones that we see at the parks, the wooden ones, but this is like rubber. Some users claim that the rubber generates more insects than the wooden chips, but it's certainly more like it's a better cushion when it comes to somebody falling into from the playground itself.
I think that we should get some other options like Mr. Garcia just mentioned on the type of floor that we're going to need for these playgrounds.
Well, the other one is...
There has to be other options too.
This is for the area where, not where they walk, but around the,
It's around the playground, yeah.
around the playground,
Right.
yeah.
And there's some specifications, depending on the size, you need to have some clearance, on
We had
every...
I think Mr. Perez is instrumental in the one at Santo Niño, and they have wooden chips.
Yes,
And every time it rains, those chips are everywhere.
yeah.
And we did the same thing at Dryden, not Dryden, at Via what the Sol? Via del Sol,
Right.
Ah, okay.
and it had wooden chips, and then we removed them and actually put a rubber mat on it
Surface.
that had little holes in it that can breathe.
Yeah.
And never had problem with it again.
Yeah, we can definitely explore that option. That one, it would be the high end, the $25 per square foot. It would be poured into the site, but that would be high end, so we can definitely explore the
Look at
rubber
that.
mats as well.
Artificial
Moreno?
turf too. Artificial turf could be another option. I don't know how expensive that is, but
It needs to be tested by ASTM and all those agencies just to make sure that,
We'll get a artificial surface,
Okay.
artificial
Dr. Moreno,
grass.
do you have a?
Artificial grass.
There's been some news lately about some of the rubber chips.
Cancer. I already researched that. I agree. So there'll be parents that bring that to our concern, that that starts making a case for the rubber surface more, but certainly about 4 times the cost.
Caliche.
Okay,
So-
next item.
Okay, thank you. Item number 2 is discussion and presentation to discuss options to commit and assign the estimated surplus construction funds from the period ended August 31, 2015, to fund additional projects or expenditures. Members of the board, we have, I want to call it our annual discussion, where once our finance department completes the budget process for 2000, for the last fiscal year, in this case, the 2014-2015 year. To make a long story short, we have approximately $6.7 million in excess revenues. And we know that the board is going to want some opportunity to look at this and make some final decisions about how we use those excess revenues. So if you'll just stay with me briefly, I have a brief presentation, and then the board can comment or question as you deem necessary. I'd like to start, you have a one-page document. It has 4 boxes on it. Each of the boxes is a different option. You'll notice that they all start with the $6,725,157 because that's what we have. And then you'll see on items A through J, on each of those, that's just a start of things that we've identified as a staff that we are considering recommending. I'd like to start with option 4, if I can, which is the bottom right corner. And on that particular option, we're suggesting all of it goes to the unassigned fund balance. None of it is used for the projects. And then I won't explain options 1, 2, and 3 because I think you can tell them, but what I'd like to do is option A is obviously our,
So why does it have balance? I don't understand the balance.
You're subtracting the amount they're asking, that's the balance after subtracting.
it's a running balance.
It's a running balance.
It's a running.
Dr. Nelson, Mr. Valdez has a concern at this,
Yes,
not a concern, but a comment.
On this, in my recent visits to the elementary schools, I haven't been too active in the academic portion of the district. I mostly stick to other things. But I started looking into that. We have a curriculum in place that requires the use of iPads, okay? And to make a long story short, we have an average of 4 to 5 iPads per classroom. You have an average of 20 and sometimes 22 children per classroom. This program is used to gauge the performance of students, and they have very limited access to those iPads. Now, the teachers, of course, have been told, that it's coming and all that, okay?
Right.
But it hasn't gotten here. And yet, the students are being assessed on the use of those iPads. Some of the
reading.
teachers, and I hope that no teachers are called in and told, don't talk to board members. Okay?
No, we're not doing that.
No, it happens, okay, so I hope it doesn't happen. We don't need to go into those things, okay? The issue here is this: we need iPads now. We need them now, okay? Because the students need them, or change the curriculum. Either state law, the education code states very clearly that we're supposed to provide principals, and I'm talking about the board of directors, trustees. We're supposed to provide principals with the tools necessary to carry out the functions of the district. To make a long story short, and to add a little spice to the agenda, we need about $4 million worth of iPads and projectors. When you visit those schools, you'll see what I'm talking about. I believe the procedure should be the following. This is information at this point for the board. The procedure should be the following: to do an in-depth study of how many we need per classroom. Now, we need to develop the formula. A child needs about 2 hours a day between 1 hour, and this is just my estimate, about an hour to an hour and a half to 2 hours a day with an iPad in order to comply with those points that they need to make, reading the books and so on. Okay? They're bunching up and they're not getting that. So if you look at that, I believe that if we can have between 8 and 10 iPads per classroom, where you have 22. I see Mr. Monod is already looking at the heavens.
Well, maybe.
I think that, and also the projectors. This is the equipment that is direly needed so that our students can function.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Manoa, you want to?
No.
Let me speak to that.
Él no es. Now, my information is that we have received federal monies for the purchase of equipment, okay? Well, that's fine, we should thank the federal government for that. But if it's not enough, we have a little kitty over there. And what a better place to spend our money than to meet the needs of our students. And there's going to be a nice little crowd here at the next board meeting. And we're asking for students to come in, okay? There's been some letters recently in the newspapers criticizing us. Instead of answering those people, we need to look at ourselves. And I did. We need iPads. That's one. I haven't finished looking. But we need iPads and we need them now. And I know that from what I've been told that a plan had been put in place where in additional years we would be purchasing as federal monies come in. Well, we can do that, but then we will grade students as those things come in. In other words, we cannot grade them right now because they're needed right now, okay? So we need about $4 million added to this wish list so that our students can have a chance. That's the curriculum we have in place. By God, let's implement it. Thank you.
Respond to that, Mr. President?
Thank you for this. Okay, Dr. Nelson, you want to?
I just want to confirm that I actually had a conversation this afternoon with Mr. Valdez about his point. I respect it, but if you'll look at our presentation tonight, you'll see that in each of our options, we have already allocated different amounts of money for projectors. We have one, under option 1, we've allocated 1.5 million for projectors. Under option 2, we've allocated 3.09 million in projectors. If this board was to decide to go with option 2, then that would take care of every projector need we have from Mr. Manoa's team doing an analysis. It would cover 1,004 classrooms, and we would be fully staffed, or we would upgraded to have projectors as Mr. Valdez is suggesting. We do not have on this list, because we just heard from Mr. Valdez this afternoon, we do not have on this list iPads. We do have a technology plan where, as Mr. Valdez eloquently said, we have been phasing those in through a very detailed technology plan. Accelerated reader is a priority. Reading is one of our main areas we need to improve, and iPads are a way for kids to read their book and take their tests. So it's obviously something we could support, but let me give you another example very respectfully. Last board meeting, the Honorable Dr. Moreno made a motion, had it seconded and approved by this board to use these excess revenues for statues. We don't know exactly how much that's going to be yet, but that's another, I want to call it mandate, that is coming out of this money. It could be, we're not exactly sure because we haven't even really began the procurement process, so we're not sure how much it's going to cost, but we were already allocating approximately $75,000 per statue. That puts us, so you have things like statues, you have things like iPads. You know, one of the things that's come up before, I'm not trying to suggest things, it's none of these are on this list, because it'll have to come from the board in order for, staff is not recommending it, but I've been here before where the staff says, well, how much, where the board says, how much would it cost to give every paraprofessional an extra $500 in their Christmas check? You remember that, Mr. Garcia? In their December check? And we had to calculate figures that were $2-3 million. And it was given to us in October. We can't do it for, according to John Kazin, we cannot do it for contractual employees after their contract is started. But if it's the will of the board, we could do it for every paraprofessional. You can give them all $1,000 at Christmas. It's only money.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Garcia?
Yeah, I know that Dr. Moreno, we come out and we talked about that, and we talked to come with a plan that we didn't support the whole thing, that it was a partnership between the school district, the school itself, and the district, not at one time.
Where they'd raise money.
Right.
Is that, okay.
Like we did for the board, because I think it has to be a two-way street.
Okay.
But
Which is why it's not here, Mr.
in the
Chairman.
projectors, with the projector service purpose, with the projector serve the purpose that we need right now until the iPads come in as they come in? Because I think that's very crucial, that we've always said that we're going to support our teachers and not set them up for failure, and if we're not getting them all the equipment that they need, as they say, you know what, then we should. I mean, we need to look at both parts of it.
Yes, sir.
And if it doesn't go into a building, again, we do have a pretty a stash of money put away that we can use for that, because this is very crucial for the development of our kids' education.
Mr. Monroe, would you like to add?
No, Dr. Nelson, good evening, members of the board. Definitely, we have a plan to replace all the projectors in the district. It's built into our capital improvement plan. We've done roughly about half of all the classrooms in the district today. Last year, the board approved assigning excess funds at this time of the year to do 6 or 7 campuses. So as of today, about 1,000 classrooms remain throughout the district at about 12 to 13 schools. So if the board approves the option for $3 million, that would put a brand new projector in the remaining classrooms of the district. And to Mr. Garcia's point, I think that would, it's not related to the iPad, it's independent of it, and the teachers could see an immediate benefit to it pretty quickly.
So is that more important
Dr.
than the
Moreno?
actual iPads?
I believe so, because the projector in the classroom today attaches to everything. It attaches to the teacher's laptop, it attaches to their document camera, everything that they do in their classroom.
Except that, are you replacing projectors that are not working, or are you replacing projectors
All of them,
to,
yeah.
And they have
Every
the
single one.
capacity to connect an iPad to that?
Yes.
So you can, for one iPad, you're able to use it for the whole class?
Yes.
Explain how everything goes?
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to...
The new projectors allow that ability to where a teacher can connect their iPad to the projector and share
And they're
with
doing
the whole
it.
classroom.
Mr. Valdez?
Yes, getting away from the bonds and back to the classroom, this is not for you, Mr. Mono. You can stay there. We need those things now. You cannot make plans, and I don't want to go too deep into this, because to criticize is not going to solve any problems. What we need right now is iPads. And if anybody doubts it, I welcome a little walkthrough in 3 or 4 schools, and you're going to find out. And those kids are so excited, 3 or 4 of them with one iPad. Come on now. And not only that, teachers bring their own iPads. I don't know how they use them, they'll connect them or whatever, but they did, and we got all this money over here. Oh, come on now.
One more question real quick.
Yes, Mr. Garcia.
And I think to Mr. Dr. Nelson,
Yes, sir.
on our bond, if I'm not mistaken, we put money away, but we asked the taxpayers that there was going to be money for technology, and we said we're going to put money away for
Security.
education, where it doesn't have to all come from here. It can actually come from the bond money, because we said we were going to do that.
how much have we spent of that, and how much do we have left that we can invest, part of it from here and part of it from the bond?
Go look at that.
Because I know we did, how much did we put away from?
I think it was 5 million, or between 2 to 5 million for safety and security.
Right.
And that was for cameras and access control at the campuses.
Right.
Since then, in working with our finance department and Dr. Nelson, those type of investments have a very short lifespan, just 5 years. So in working with the CFO, she had some concerns with taking a bond that's financed for many years to pay for something that is a very short, useful life to us. So,
But that's not what that's fine, that's an opinion.
so we funded those things.
We had taxpayers that we were going to use it for
A different way.
technology and that, so we were able to do that.
Yeah, we're able to, if that's the will of the board, and
We can go get the balance.
Definitely,
We've
yeah.
already done access controls at all schools.
Right.
So that dipped into a lot of that. We've enhanced our security systems, our cameras. So we can get the balance. We could find several funding sources, which really, very respectfully, Mr. Valdez, because I don't disagree with you. And that's the only thing I want to say, and I don't mean it disrespectfully, but if you're suggesting that we are keeping teachers and kids from accessing technology, that's inconsistent with our technology plan. I mean, we've committed to technology in ways that we've documented to the board. Having said that, if you could look at,
I will ask that question to the little kids, see what they say.
understand.
Let them answer.
Right. If you look, though, for the record, if you look at item A, number A on all 4 options, that is a commitment that this board has discussed, made it very clear to staff that, and you'll see here in our last agenda item, we've tried to begin the planning process of how we would move out of downtown. Mr. Garza's not here tonight, but he had an agenda last month to bring a plan on how to get us from being downtown completely. Dr. Moreno's been a champion for us centralizing our offices so that we can be more effective and more efficient. We support all of that, but that would basically mean one option is you could put these excess revenues to that. We have amendments that we've agreed to that's an option. You also have the
We
LIS.
already said that we
Oh.
would always approve a certain amount of money to go into that administration.
That is true. That is
So
correct.
I don't know why we even have option 2 or 4 there, because that would not do it. We've always said that we need to.
You're saying all the
County-
money should go to the central office?
No, I'm just saying there has to be some.
Hey, I see what
going
you're
in.
saying. I see what you're saying.
That's what
And
that's what
every
the
year,
option
we
is,
have
right?
to be adding to it so that we can never get there. Otherwise, if we don't have the money and we don't even get the work done,
Right, you've made that point clear.
it's very, very important. That's
Absolutely.
part of why our scores are where they are.
Mr. Valdez?
Yeah. At the next board meeting, there's going to be an agenda item to address these issues, okay? And we'll show you,
Okay.
the agenda item will identify where the money's going to come from. And let's see what the board says. But those iPads and the other things must be approved, and the students must have those, or else something is wrong with our curriculum.
Okay, what about the projectors? No, that's not the
Wait a
same
minute. Well,
priority?
you already got them here.
Right,
so
but
we'll buy more
we've got, you
iPads.
can do $1 million worth of projectors? You
Well,
could
let
do
me-
$3 million worth of projectors?
Let me say this, this is fresh off the press, okay? In other words, we just got this, that's why I didn't know that this was here, but, which is great, it's great, I appreciate that. The agenda item will say, let's do it, because this doesn't say we do it, this is for consideration of options,
Right.
okay?
Right.
Well, the other one is going to say, we move, and we move fast.
We support that 100%.
And I know we got
If
the
it's-
staff that can install them, ¿verdad?
Right, that includes installation.
And a lot of teachers that are waiting to see what happens tonight.
Right, that's great, and so are we. We're waiting to see as well.
Talk to
Having-
9 of them.
And
don't
what we're doing right now is this, see how we're going to distribute that 6,725,000. Okay,
Yes,
that's
sir.
what we're doing right now.
Right.
How much of that money is going to be for projectors and how much for iPads? Now, if we need more money, then we go to the bond money if we can get some out or what. So we need to, I agree 100% with Mr. Valdez. We do need to do something about the iPads if the kids need it. Okay? So how much of this 6.7 million, how much of that is going to go to iPads?
None.
Now, right now, okay, no, but that's what we're gonna try to change, Mr. Valdez. So we can have, instead of having 3 million in projectors, maybe 1 million in projectors and 2 million iPads. How does that sound?
No, that won't get us the iPads that Mr. Valdez is.
I really like to see what the balance is in the technology part of
The
the
bond.
bond and the extra money that we had on the bond. Because I like to see what Mr. Valdez said, even if we don't fund it all through the $6 million, that we fund enough to buy everybody an iPad that we need. I agree 100%
Well,
with that. But I don't think it all should come from the 675. We have money in other areas that, you know, we're able to bring
Right.
that.
Yes,
to-
Mr. President,
Okay.
yes, Mr. Perez?
yeah, I would like to know, like Mr. Minoa said, that you could connect the projectors to the iPad and to the computer and everything. Would that suffice for the students at each of the classrooms, that they don't need the iPads?
No, sir. No, sir, it would not.
No?
According to Mr. Valdez's powerful presentation, we would need to buy approximately $4 to $6 million worth of iPads. And if that's the will of this board, then we're prepared to do that. We can get different funding sources, but let me please be clear, because this is not, we're not trying to sway you one way or the other. This idea came, statues is not on here as well.
Right.
So if that's something we need to bring, because that's what we agreed, the board voted,
That already brought
No,
it to
but-
you, why would you?
I haven't,
well, because, Mr. Valdez is the same person, respectfully. I don't mean, I'm not trying to engage in debate,
Wait a minute.
but playground item I, as in Indigo, that's a little under $1 million commitment. And it's priority, because it's going to be hot in March, in April, and I'm ready to do that too. But if we're going to do iPads, we may not do playground shade structures. We're not going to be able to do all of this.
Okay.
Mr. President?
Mr. Perez?
Yes, no, my question was, Dr. Nelson,
Yes, sir.
do we comply with the program, the instructional program, by having the projectors and just let the teacher use the iPad or whatever? Because Mr. Valdez is saying that unless everybody has an iPad, that they won't be able to comply or pass the test.
Right.
My question is, with what the plan is, as you have it here, to buy all the projectors, that we were able to give the students a chance to pass the test.
Well, Mr. Pettit, may I respond to that, Mr. President?
Mr. Valdez?
Well, I think it would be appropriate if you respond to Mr. Perez.
Thank
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Valdez?
Okay. Mr. Valdez. First of all, the two items that I have brought tonight are emergency items for students, okay? This is for students. There's a heat crisis that comes every year, and teachers are worried more than anybody, because they're with the children there every day when they take them out there to play. And they're very worried. Some of those kids have little health, cards that say that they're not supposed to do this or to do that. There are 2 or 3 of them in one school, okay? In other words, they
In
have to
every school.
they have to keep an eye on them.
Yes,
So
sir.
they get nervous, okay? The heat is a problem, okay? The other one is the iPads. If the iPads are not a priority, then we should get rid of the present curriculum that we have, because it is a requirement. They use that to the quizzes. I was very impressed in 2 schools with those little kids, they go out there, oh my God, they get in there and all that, and I thought they didn't know how. They got those books, the codes and everything, and I said, wow. One of them even went like this, moved me over. But coming back to this, and there were 2 or 3 of them, you're bunching up. They want to learn. They want to use that equipment, but where is the equipment? So if we don't buy, as Mr. Garcia said, if we don't provide the iPads for all of them, then change the curriculum, because they're being graded on that right now.
Well, let's just concentrate on how we're going to do it.
I know how.
We need to do it.
You're using,
Okay.
let me finish this, please. I
know,
think it's
but-
important.
But we're looking at the 6.7 million. Mr.
Well,
Valdez.
let me tell you what
Out
we're
of that,
looking at.
How much can we do?
Okay, that whatever million is fund balance money.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Right.
Yes, sir.
Well,
It
is
could
that the
be.
total fund balance money that we have, or do we have 60-some million? You know what the answer
This
is.
is the
In
new-
other words, there's
yeah.
money there. When I put the agenda item, I'll show you exactly where it's coming from, so that the board can consider, okay? It's for the kids. Thank you.
Mr. Martinez, can I ask one question? real
Mr.
quick?
Garcia?
And just on the same page Mr. Pettis was, in our schools, don't we have
Tienen vergüenza,
class
Sets.
sets?
We have carts. And
So
before,
so not every kid, if the teachers, if the schools are organized, and I'm just not, because I think it's very crucial to iPad, but I also think, as Mr. Martinez said, the projectors are more, I think, more important. But at every school, if we have class sets, and so we don't throw it all at one time, what's our plan? When is every school supposed to have completely with iPads? Years?
Every elementary school to date has an average of 4 carts that contain 25 iPads.
So we have 100 per class. If they organize it, everybody can
per
use
school.
an iPad.
Per school, 100 per school. The campuses also have 2 carts of laptops. So they're on carts, they're on wheels, they can move them around and they can schedule their use. They can
And
order, or
they
they
can
can
take-
distribute them 4 per classroom. So some schools have decided to do that, and
And-
some keep them in the carts.
and to answer
Mr.
Mr.
Noyola?
Pettis.
So maybe we shouldn't have given them
Mr.
the option. We should have
Yeah,
said that
we
they
should
were
keep them
intended to
together.
be used as a set, so that everybody has one for every student at the same time.
Well, the first I'm hearing of it is tonight with Mr. Valdez. My assumption all along, and from what I've seen in my observations, that they stay in carts.
Mine too.
In all
But based on
fairness-
what I'm hearing, it sounds like a school did that. We'd have to visit and see
In
why
all
they're doing
fairness,
that.
in the district, in all the schools that I go to within my area, I have not heard one complaint about iPads, period. Because I know that they have 5 or 6 sets that they're taking to the classroom. I never heard of.
Absolutely.
I never heard of a classroom with 4. I heard a classroom with 25, and then they turn them in, and the next class has them.
Absolutely.
I've never heard of that.
So
But
can
if
we
these
get
schools
a
are doing that,
report
maybe-
from each
yeah.
of the schools
Makes it
about how they're
worse.
using them and
Absolutely, we can
how they
provide that
rotate those
report.
around?
Yes, be happy to.
Mr. Noyola?
Dr. Nelson, how does administration feel about the needs for iPads?
Well, we absolutely are committed to making sure our kids use technology in every aspect of their learning. As you know, Mr. Noyola and members of the board, we already give every 9th grade student a laptop computer. So our technology plan is wide and deep. It is not something, very respectfully to Mr. Valdez, no, I disagree. It's not an emergency. It's like saying that because it's hot outside, now all of a sudden we got an emergency? It didn't just start getting hot outside in Laredo. Now, should we provide shade structures? Absolutely. I'm not against that. I'm just saying it's not an emergency. Our kids have access. We may have had a situation at Santa Maria where instead of using the carts, as Mr. Garcia described, which is what I've seen as well, along with Mr. Manoa, along with everyone else who monitors it, we have carts. We were going to add carts over time. I don't know the answer to the question, how long till every kid would have a laptop? What was the window of when we'd be done with the implementation of our technology plan? Do you know that off the top of your head, or is that something you'd have to go?
At our middle schools, we have 1 iPad for every student.
We're working our way down.
And we're working our way down. The elementaries, we were adding carts every couple of years, so they've gotten 4. We fund these through federal funding, and normally it all depends on our carry forward, our maximum entitlement. So sometime around December, we look at how much funds we have, and we try to give the elementaries as many carts as we can afford based on the federal budget.
On this, if the board was to take action through fund balance or excess revenues to buy iPads, would that be allowable expense?
I would think that would not be, we would be supplanting, basically.
Not that it's not a wonderful idea.
Why would that be an illegal use of funds?
It wouldn't be necessarily an illegal use of funds, but it would disqualify us. It would not be illegal, it would just
But you
disqualify us
use the
from
grant that you're
using
getting from
federal funds going forward.
Federal funds.
So we would do that knowing that we couldn't use federal funds to buy iPads anymore.
And with the same intensity and passion that Mr. Valdez is advocating for these emergencies, I've heard other trustees advocate for central office building, which I agree with. So I just think we need to prioritize our monies. I agree we need to look at all of our funding sources. But Mr. Pettis, if I may have an opportunity to just answer your initial question, we are testing kids on accelerated reader daily. With or without, we use our computer labs. We have all kinds of ways for could we have more? Absolutely. Could we make a decision today to fund a one-to-one initiative for iPads at elementary school? Districts across the state have done that for third grade and above, second grade and above, whatever you wanted to decide. We're just saying that we also have a damaged baseball complex. Now, we can look at other funding sources, but right now, in order to fix that baseball complex to the ideas that staff is presenting, you're looking at approximately $2.5 million. There's a recent Senate Bill 507, mandates special ed cameras in every special ed room. That could cost anywhere from $300,000 to $400,000.
And you cannot use special ed money for that.
I'm sure we could use, if that was not something we use excess revenues, we could look for other funding sources, absolutely.
And I say that because we keep not spending our special ed money. Every time you bring us those reports, there's a special ed money that's not being spent.
Great point. We could take that off of this list. We just tried to projectors is already on here. Hydraulic lifts at Nixon to the tune of $20,000. It's because Martin and Figueroa got brand new ones and Nixon's is dilapidated. And so we don't have Kate monies for that. And it's a need that's been identified after we started the school year.
We don't have Kate money because our budget didn't provide for that, or why not?
Because we spent it for we had already identified other priorities instead of these hydraulic lifts. So we could build the hydraulic lifts into the next budget. They could go without them for a few months. I'm sure they would say, just like Mr. Valdez said, people are watching. I'm sure Nixon, Kate wants this too.
I guess I don't understand. Remember there was funds left over in the Kate grant also?
I do remember.
So why is there money being left over in those grants when
we have these needs
are here?
That's definitely something we could look into. The training hills, item G, as in Gary, that's an initiative that really came from a conference we attended. There are these makeshift air-inflated hills that technically Martin already has one in Shirley Stadium. And you see kids running up the stairs as part of their training. Well, one of our ideas was to provide that for Figueroa and for Nixon High School as well. So we don't have to. It just came up when we went to Tasby. And we thought it was something that our kids could benefit from. It could be removed. Middle school band uniforms. Middle school band uniforms are $200 each. And we have 675 kids that need a uniform in middle school band. I would think that would be a priority.
Right.
Unless we're buying iPads. So,
I would look at the iPad, because I do like the idea of the iPad. The only thing is, on the iPad, if we can't use our money, because I know if you use money, you can lose that funding if we use our own money.
Yes, sir.
But how much money do we have in that federal program that we can delegate now and say, you know what, I'm gonna buy, if we can't buy the $4 million, how many more sets can we buy for the schools that
Sure.
we're asking for?
That's a good question.
Around, and do that, and do it, and use the federal funds so we don't use this money and lose that money at the end, because I know that I had brought something else up, they said you can't use it because you lose the rest of the money.
Right.
Oh, the iPads that I was gonna put in $20,000
To
to
buy
buy
for your
iPads
schools.
for,
Bowden,
what are they called?
dyslexia.
Yes,
504.
dyslexia.
The
Yes,
504,
yes,
because they
yes.
needed them, and
Well-
they could find them.
Mira, discretionary monies, Mr. Garcia.
I couldn't use it.
No, I understand. It's too easy to say, hey, board member, let's buy it from there. But
Se nos
we
acaba.
have other monies for that. Regular monies should be used for regular, activities and regular functions. And it's just, we're really evolving into this whole new arena, okay? And I think in the end, we're going to get more iPads. We're going to get all the things that we need here. And as far as somebody saying, I know the word illegal was used, and sometimes I raise my voice a little bit, but when you're a little bit deaf, you find out that you're hearing yourself when you speak. And when you're deaf, a little bit deaf, you raise your voice because you can't hear yourself.
Absolutely.
A lot of people don't understand that. When do you get old? But coming back to this, there's no way, from what I'm hearing here, we have not spent all our federal monies. Okay, I know from previous years, some of those monies, not all, but some of those monies perhaps could be transferred over to activities that we need. Again, maybe we need to talk to those people in Washington. When the little trip takes over to DC, well, we don't have to go with the city, we can go on our own anytime. But we need to go out there and discuss these things with the people out there that manage these programs at the federal level.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, the issue here is this, let's get iPads. The kids will not understand excuses. They do not. They want iPads and that's all that's going to, es todo. Okay?
I think that we also need to
Moreno?
look into the use of them. How many schools divided them up and now the kids don't have them? When you have your sets, then everybody's got an iPad at the time that they schedule the classes to use them. So we could end up buying more sets this year, yes, but at the same time, we need to make sure that the schools are using them as complete sets. That was the way they were intended to be used.
Yes.
We have to follow up.
So we need to use also, I'm sorry, Mr. Perez?
Yes, Mr. Manoa mentioned that if we start buying certain amount of equipment, that we might start supplanting. At what point do we start that, In other words, when you said, you start buying all the iPads, you're gonna be supplanting, so that would be...
It's my understanding that at the point that we make a decision as a district to use local funds to buy any item that we would have traditionally used federal funds for, so whenever we make the first purchase order, the first expense, then we basically are forfeiting our intent of ever going back to federal programs to buy that same item anytime after that. So if we come to an agreement that we want to use local funds to buy iPads, whenever we make the first order, then we shouldn't be using federal funds for iPads anymore.
So we're gonna lose
$1
the
million and forfeit $50 million.
Right.
Mr. President, Mr. Manua.
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's a very simple thing. You use all your federal monies, you commit them, okay?
Next year?
And then, no, you commit them right now.
Do it next
In other words, if you need X amount, you commit your total federal funds, and then the next ones, okay?
Right.
If you don't have enough, we use our local monies. Nobody ever said we're going to use our monies instead of using the federal monies. Come on now. No. I think we know what needs to be done.
There's been good discussion, and we've got an agenda item at our committee meetings to talk about special revenues. We'll do a report on our iPad usage in the carts, and I know Mr. Valdez is sponsoring an agenda item, and we'll be glad to work with him on bringing any kind of...
The board.
Yeah, the
Present it
board
to the board.
Right.
That's what I meant, yes, okay.
Next item.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. Next item?
We didn't talk about all the stuff, did we?
Well, if I may, just, you can take this with you.
Oh, okay.
We asked for any kind of feedback on some of these items, like the hills, for example. I'm wondering if the majority of the board would say, nah, that's not a priority today.
It's that you can find funds from somewhere else for that. It's 21,000. This is for really the big things.
The big projects.
Yes,
Yes,
we
ma'am.
couldn't fund any other way.
That sounds great. Well, thank you all for all that lively discussion, and we'll bring that back. Item number 3.
Number 3?
Is discussion and presentation on design options for the LISD Performing Arts Center, including tennis course complex and other master plan considerations. Mr. President, members of the board, this is a follow-up to our last conversation regarding the Civic Center. This board has hired Frank Architects as the architect, and what the direction that we received from our last meeting. Thank you. direction we received from the board from our last meeting was basically that we would bring back 3 options. And one of those options is basically what we call a minimum uplift. It is a little bit more than paint. It does not, it starts to address some of our needs in terms of ADA compliance and restrooms that are clogging up and being unused, a new chiller, things like that. Option B that you'll see here in just a minute from our architect is what we call UIL compliant. We're not saying we have to be, but if we ever wanted to get into hosting one-act plays, tournaments, and then we'd have to add some dressing rooms, we'd have to add some things, and that's a little bit more expensive. And then the third option that you'll see, we're not advocating for any option tonight, we're just showing you a response to what you asked for, is a redesign of the Civic Center, including ADA compliance, UIL compliance, and it would be a central office that we would build there as well. Obviously, that would be the most expensive. I want to reiterate that we have followed the board's direction to go and visit with all the stakeholders in the user groups, including the Civic Center manager, including safety and security, including theater arts, fine arts. All these people have participated in what we call the preliminary scope of work. So with that, I would like to introduce Mr. Frank Rutnowski, who's needs no introduction to this group, and take us through his brief presentation that will allow us for comments or questions from our trustees. May we proceed, Mr. President?
Yes, go ahead, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Rutnowski.
Okay, there I am. Good evening, Frank Witnowski with Frank Architects. Like Dr. Nelson mentioned, we have 3 different project approaches, each one building on top of the other. And if you'll bear with me, we can just go to the PowerPoint, and I'll take you through the scenarios.
I know.
Option 1, or Scheme A, which is up on the projector screen, is primarily we're looking at the renovation of the Civic Center, like Dr. Nelson had earlier mentioned, which would be basically giving the building a facelift. So some of the items that would be...
You're talking about the auditorium, right?
Yes, sir. The auditorium.
Not the Civic Center.
Well, yes, the Civic Center, you're absolutely right. The Civic Center complex, this would be the auditorium building right here, ballroom, auxiliary buildings right here, the breakout rooms. So we're looking at this building here, and after meeting over the past month with staff, like Dr. Nelson said, going through the building, looking at some of the needs, essentially, we know that the building needs ADA upgrades, and that's everything from restroom renovations to accessibility to the building itself, up to the floor, up to the actual house of the auditorium. There are issues with leakage. There's roof repairs that would need to be done. We would have to comply with life safety codes, including HVAC upgrades. There are plumbing issues, as well as just basically repairing the building envelope itself and then refinishing the entire building, which is painting and materials. And essentially, looking at that as a scope of work for that area, and that's where I'm highlighting right here. If we put together a preliminary budget, and that would be somewhere in the range of $4.5 to $5 million. There's also been discussion of adding the Martin High School tennis courts to the four corners, as it's referred to, and that proposal would be somewhere in this area right here. And again, if you go back to the second slide, there's a projected budget of approximately $1.5 million, $1,580,000.
Mr. Rutnowski, let me just be clear on this.
Sure.
If I may, just briefly. So we want to be clear that on the tennis courts, the we've already allocated the funding for that, for $1.5 million. And in each design that you'll see tonight, the first one, we're saying $4.5 to $5 million, and we're using the tennis courts as a separate line item because you may decide to put the tennis courts somewhere else. Now, we feel like we've already made that decision, but I want to be respectful for all opinions, and that's why it's a separate line item.
Okay.
I did have a question on those. How many courts are we building?
9.
9?
9. Is that correct?
Is that 9 there?
Yes, there are. Right here, there's
Those 8 there.
3, 8, Well, there's
shows
8
eight,
right here, but this would be the 9th, the competition.
Okay, but it does show 8.
I'm sorry, it's the competition,
Okay.
which would be
that's fine. No problem.
the nicer one.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
Yes. Project approach to option B would be basically everything that I just briefly took you through, which is bringing the building up to code and cleaning it up. But also, as was earlier mentioned by Dr. Nelson, option B would be looking at bringing the building up to UIL compliance, which is different than just cleaning up the building. So what we're looking at here is, this is the existing auditorium. Everything you see highlighted here in yellow would be additional square footage added on to the auditorium, and what that would give us are more ample spaces to be able to accommodate breakout rooms, dressing rooms, the back of the house, the extension actually of the back of the auditorium area, the wing areas, which right now don't meet those requirements for a full-fledged blown-out theater. It also would include incorporating a larger lobby area that could be also used for meeting areas, and we also were proposing in this scheme to somehow connect the auditorium to the ballroom and then do a renovation of the ballroom. So if you go to slide B, budget.
Can I ask real quick? It's a renovation of the ballroom. We're not knocking the ballroom down, right?
No, that's correct. That's reusing the auditorium and the ballroom.
Okay.
And so if you go to the slide B here, basically everything highlighted in blue is what I previously had illustrated in Scheme A. What gets added, of course, is the UIL compliance and then the complete ballroom renovation and the additional requirements. So that would bring up the proposed budget to 13 to 14 million, because it's quite a extensive addition that would be added onto these buildings and full renovation. Again, we're showing the tennis courts as a separate item like Dr. Nelson had mentioned. Are there any questions on option B before we go to C?
Now, I understand that the UIL compliance is no longer in compliance,
Yes,
so we don't have, an item such as compliance for UIL.
that's correct.
So then what are you putting it there for?
It's, well, because currently you don't have a UIL compliant auditorium.
Yeah,
If-
but we don't have UIL compliance guidelines anymore.
But
I'm sorry.
I think the possibility of us.
If you were going to.
Our UIL teams have to compete every year out of town. They can't compete locally because we don't have a UIL auditorium for performances. So our kids that work hard every year have to travel to San Antonio, Del Rio,
Eagle Pass.
Corpus Christi, but we're not able to host one ourselves. So the compliance is so much as the dressing rooms and everything that goes part of that. So now you're in compliance where we can actually host tournaments for our kids. Like we say, everything is for our kids. And that's something that we had gone to our taxpayers and said, you know what, we want to, not compliance in the way you said, by form,
Code or
but
something.
by code,
code.
or but
Then what do we
by
have?
space and dressing areas, so they're able to compete in locally, and we can host them ourselves, like
See,
we host everything else.
Dr. Nelson?
See, to have like a UIL one-act play tournament,
Yes.
you have to have, there's very strict rules about they get off the bus, they're supposed to go dress here, they warm up here, they perform, and then they come off the stage and they go here, and currently, we can't use the Civic Center for
What about
that.
VMT,
What about,
the auditorium there?
it is
Didn't
not
we make it-
UIL compliant.
It's not?
It's
I thought
not
we made
UIL
an issue to do that.
No, I mean, we could use it for stuff, but as far as hosting a one-act play, a several high school one-act play, no, it's not.
Okay, well, then we need to double check on that, especially the one in the, Civic Center area, because I thought we didn't have any more issues on that, as far as we.
No, it's just a magnet school,
In housing
so-
competition. Well, magnet school, if you say, I still don't understand. I thought they did away from the
When
compliances.
you have a one-act play, you don't have one school at a time. You've got one school arriving,
Yeah,
one school
I understand.
performing, another school breaking down, or whatever that's called.
So
with the-
where are the guidelines for that?
Well, it's not so much like a booklet or
For
a
compliance.
rules. No, it's being able, I really believe that Laredo ISD wants to host a
Yes, we
one-act
can host it. There's no guidelines. We have an auditorium that's big enough, and we'll see what we need.
They don't have
But we don't have specific rules as to what we have to have as far as the building is concerned.
Okay. No problem.
I
No
think this is
problem.
very important to our school
Next time.
district and to our students.
Yes.
Mr. Martinez.
What's the
And I
difference
think,
in
yeah, I
price?
think it is, and we're trying to
Even the
cheapskate it
stage
out.
has to be a
We
certain
don't.
size.
We gotta do what's right.
Te habla Héctor.
Mr. Nagala?
Frank, Scheme B, does it include the baseball park?
No, that's going to be presented in Scheme C, the next one. Because this one primarily is the auditorium, the addition to the auditorium, and then the full renovation and connection back to the ballroom.
The items in red.
Yes.
What happened to the Chamber of Commerce building?
It's there in Scheme B. It's,
But it's
We're not
not,
touching it.
is
No,
it in the picture?
It's not there.
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
That
It-
decision is the
Okay,
board's.
no, it's there, but it's not in this picture. We just focused on the scheme. It will be there. We're not touching those buildings here, I'm sorry. Yes, that's a very good observation. That's pretty good.
Well, on C, it's worse. I don't know.
Well, C, no,
You have no space for the building.
in C, we are proposing to take down all the buildings with the exception of the auditorium. That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not in
And
favor.
what do those red little circles mean?
That's what he's working on. That's
These are the areas. This would be the renovation of the two buildings, the auditorium, ballroom, and
Red
then
circles, just,
these,
they're just
They're-
around the area you're talking about?
yeah, they're circling around the areas that we're
Highlighting.
proposing in Scheme B. Yes,
The chamber is going to, excuse me, but if you add the Chamber of Commerce there, that's going to throw off the whole picture, no? You have to redraw the whole thing again?
no, it's there.
Aquí está. Pero no lo pusieron.
Ahí
No,
cabe, ¿ves?
It would be there. That would be the,
You do have the space.
yeah, the space is there, yes.
Okay.
It's there.
We just want to knock it down.
If I may, Mr. President.
Mr. Quezon?
Not in Scheme B.
Just, that's been a pending issue, of course. There is a long-term lease with the Chamber of Commerce there that I think at some point we should address as a board and
Yeah.
decide.
The board.
Buy them off.
I mean,
One of the board members, actually, in a conversation I was having, wanted to meet with the superintendent and the president on the possibility, they gave him another property to move the
Yeah.
chambers to. They'd asked me, and I said, you know what, you need to talk to the superintendent and Mr. Yeah. And I told him, I
but-
already have a ridiculous price, so don't even
Yeah,
think
but
about it.
in the scheme of things, I don't know what they think is reasonable, but in the scheme of things, I don't think it would be,
Let him stay there with everything else.
yeah, in the construction, to go through the construction, but yeah. that-
Okay.
They'll come to us.
Scheme C.
Okay. Continue.
Okay, Scheme C is really pretty much everything. It kind of goes back to the original master plan that was put out when we applied for the project. Scheme C, again, has a lot of red because it incorporates a large swatch of the four corners, beginning with the renovation of the auditorium. And in this scheme, we are proposing to eliminate the auxiliary buildings, including this area over here with the ballroom, because what we're doing here is we're expanding the parking lot. We are losing some parking, obviously, in the tennis court area, so we're expanding parking and we're making accessible parking directly related to the PAC area. It'd be a renovated internal plaza, and then we are proposing a new ballroom with, at this area here, is the proposed administration building. We were presented a program from staff for all of your departments, and based on this preliminary program, we were coming up with approximately 110,000 square foot of required space, and that would be housed on this linear building here along San Bernardo. Also, Mr. Nayola, we would also look at the renovation of the baseball fields here, as well as earlier mentioned, the tennis courts. So this really is the largest of the schemes and certainly the most encompassing.
So,
And that-
I do have a couple of questions. First,
Sorry.
I felt that
No more ball.
maybe there should have been some renovations to the swimming pool, and I thought.
No,
this
that's
one-
in this one, last one.
Because it is.
That's in option C. It gets a covered a tarp.
Is that on there?
Well, we can, yeah, right here, we can do we talked about doing a shade
Not there
structure over the
yet.
A
pool.
shade
But
structure.
it's not there yet.
No, that light blue is not water. That's a shade
No,
structure.
we're proposing a shade structure over the swimming, that's incorporated into the budget, or the proposed budget, it's very
Okay.
preliminary. And
Then I was
Yes.
gonna ask, is there any space west of Line Decker that could have been used for parking? See that space, that green on the left side,
Here?
right there?
Yeah, towards Santa Maria.
Could that have been additional parking?
I mean, we haven't looked at it, but we could look at that. There's some square
I mean,
footage.
only because
Driveway?
Sure,
parking
we're short on
is
parking.
limited right now.
The only-
That's one of the concerns.
So my other question is, so we're building a new ballroom. What's in the ballroom? You know, school districts don't generally have ballrooms. And if we're building a new one,
When do we need one?
you know, is it a training center?
Yes, professional
So why
development.
don't we call it a training center to replace the ballroom?
Why, we should or we shouldn't?
No, I mean, I have no problems with a training center, but we should be able to say it's a training center,
Boardroom in there too.
whatever, that's replacing
Sure.
the ballroom.
Okay, get it.
No, we can clarify that.
Yeah.
the only-
I mean, if we,
you mind-
Multi-purpose center.
right.
Yes, well,
instead of
Yeah, it would be a
ballroom.
smaller, like, venue, like a smaller, yeah, it's approximately 20,000 square feet, which is based on the feedback we got from your facilities people. They said that that would be ideal for multi-purpose functions, for various functions.
So the ballroom
And
now
smaller
is like
ones.
25,000 square feet.
Mr. Garcia, you
I'm
have a
sorry.
question?
The only thing, you know what, I personally like Plan B. A new ballroom, I think the ballroom that we have with B, we can renovate that building to be the same thing. It's renovated for
Training.
conference and all that.
Multi-purpose, yeah.
We can do it with that. I'm still in the idea that I don't want central office there. I like the idea of central office being away from that area. So I'm supportive of that, not too much for that. But I would like to see a little part of C in B, which is where it comes to the fields, that the fields that are redesigned, because one of our organizations, we brought Border Olympics to Morton High School, but we can't bring track and field over there because we don't have the appropriate long jump, triple jump pits, and that's a big organization that we're missing out at LISD because the facilities are not there. Like anything else, you know what, you want to be compliant. The compliance of the auditorium, UIL, what we talked about, but also with WBCA and all that, it's very crucial that the dressing rooms are in the same building, where they're not walking from one building across the center, especially when it rains. They're walking with these huge umbrellas trying to cover them up, and
Sure.
it just doesn't make any sense. And you know, when having an auditorium with the proper dressing rooms, that place doesn't have dressing rooms, but upstairs, and you cannot. The stairs is a runway going up. It's very uncomfortable, very unsafe. So I like to see more of a little part of C put in B, but to knock down the Civic Center, in my opinion, I wouldn't want to see that, because I really
ballroom.
think the ballroom. I think the ballroom is in good shape. I think it does need a facelift, kitchen-wise, the air conditioning, roofing, and all that.
Sure.
And I just think we just need to look at the possibilities of putting some of that in B and going with something like B, because that's how much that's how much we have to bond for bond money anyway.
Well, and really, that outstanding new idea, I'm interested if the rest of the board agrees with that, because that's really sending the architect to come up with a whole new option, which I support. I'm not trying to speak against, but if, you know, Mr. Garcia is the only one saying to see a little hybrid of B and C.
Right.
And
Or A and B?
Mr. Martinez,
Yes, Mr. Novella.
on the parking spaces, Preston, how many parking spaces do we have? And how many are you eliminating with tennis courts?
we're eliminating about 200.
Yeah, there's currently 1,700 parking spaces. We're eliminating 200. If we added the parking that I was proposing in Scheme B, but we would take down the ballroom, it's all a mismatch of things, we would probably almost be close to a wash. We'd be, I think, shy about 25, but obviously, we're losing a little bit, I think we're losing 188 spaces.
That's eliminating the ballroom.
No, taking over
Tennis
the tennis
courts.
courts. The tennis courts,
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But eliminating the ballroom would add parking spaces.
that would add parking spaces.
Yeah, but that's eliminating the ballroom. We
Yes, sir.
want to do that.
No, of course.
But they
Which
want
Mr. Garcia said is a bad idea.
and add that space, but I don't think we should knock it down. I'm agreeing with that.
Mr.
But
Martinez, we should eliminate it.
the city actually said that the restructuring of the parking lot, repaint it, you're gonna gain that, because the parking lot, the way we have it, are bigger spaces than your normal spaces. So when when you repaint it and you restripe it, you're gonna pick up half of that. And I talked to the city manager myself, and he said the same thing. He goes, you know what, for the city, you have no problem with the city.
Sure.
Mr. Perez?
Yes. I wanted to know whether if we stay with the ballroom, can we build the central office there? Would it be enough space to do that?
You mean like above it,
Oh, well, yeah.
above the ballroom? You know, the other thing, that's a good question.
We could look, I mean, the thing about architecture and paper right now is we can kind of do mostly anything. I mean, we have opportunity, we can go back and look at that.
The other thing we wanted to add, Mr. Pettis, I talked to you about this morning.
Right.
We visited, the board president and myself and staff went and visited with the city manager, and one of the things we've received preliminary approval on is to build on top of the telecommunications building.
Oh, okay.
And so we thought about making that an office structure. It's not, you know, I hadn't talked to Mr. Rodnowski about it yet, but,
Right.
you know, designing something for instructional television that would be the second floor of the City of Laredo's telecom building, and then we connect to their public access. And I think the majority of the board would want to see us add that to the design.
Right.
That's no problem.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Well, maybe bring that idea, I mean, as long as you don't, I think the Civic Center, and I know Mr. Martinez has been a big advocate of that, and I've seen the Civic Center, I think that they gave it a facelift. I still think that we can, the second phase that you're connecting it to that, just that they bring it up so it looks like one beautiful structure, and maybe on the opposite side build I just think we should we need to build it somewhere, we just need to build it.
Yeah,
Yes.
one concern that I have is that we bought the Civic Center for 15 million. Now we're considering 40 million, adding to it,
No,
and 15, and,
No, I wouldn't.
well,
do
up to
that.
40,
I wouldn't-
you know, and that's, I don't,
We're doing lots of things.
yeah, I know, but we already have
iPads.
a ballroom, why destroy
But the 40
it?
includes
I don't think we should
baseball
destroy it.
field.
It could be worked back there.
tennis courts,
Tennis courts, what, one,
Administration
Administration.
building, I mean, it's not the same thing.
I think
Yeah.
we need a faith, and that was what we said we were going to do with our tax,
Well-
with our bond money.
it was
We
the,
already have the seed money for the administrative building.
yes,
So-
that we're doing good, yes.
13.
And we can go somewhere else, like you said, yeah.
That's no
Now,
problem.
you were saying something about the city, Mr. Garcia, in regards to
About
parking?
parking spots.
What?
That we-
What did they say?
That they're working with us. He said the way that they used to strip it with the city had it, they're bigger, the parking lot, the way they were stripped up is a different design. Nowadays, you need a different, it's a smaller area, but the way you mark your state, you'll have enough. We're not in compliance with the city. We wouldn't have any problem getting our permits or anything like that because we're okay. That's what we were scared of, that they weren't going to let us build because we weren't in compliance, and they said that wouldn't be a problem for them.
Okay, no, they said we could build, but we have to replace the 200 spaces somewhere.
No,
No, they told us.
Yeah, well, they
We
told me
went-
the same thing.
Okay, Dr. Nelson, myself, and Mr. Velazquez went, and he said, if you take away 200 spaces, you have to replace them somewhere else.
I thought he said the conversation was, if you take 200 spaces, we'll work with you on filling those in within your grounds.
No. He said, as long as you replace those 200 spaces
I
somewhere.
was going to bring a letter that he actually wrote, but I
Well,
forgot it.
we went to him and we asked him several times to be sure.
Well, I think we need to get,
We'll bring that letter to you so we can. show
yeah,
you
we need to
where
get
they're-
it in writing something.
Okay,
Yeah,
the letter in
Right.
writing would be that we can build,
No,
but
they're
we have to
right with
replace the
us.
200 spaces. And if we do that, then we don't have 200 spaces anywhere in the Civic Center area, and then we have to go buy a block across the street in the north side, probably, and add the 200 spaces.
But the spaces are all there.
And that block will cost us about $2 million.
So,
Is that,
I guess
Mr.
we'll.
Yeah. Okay,
say so.
again, parking spaces is an issue that has not been clearly addressed. Okay? Can, Mr. Rovnowski,
Yes, sir.
can you go back and refigure this, see if it is possible for you to add parking spaces? As an example, a select area for parking of smaller cars. See, what you need is parking spaces.
That's a good point.
No.
Compact.
Whether a car comes and parks in 2 spaces is a different issue. but you need to show the parking spaces, okay? I think they're getting smart over there. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay? If, Dr. Moreno.
Compact.
In other words, can you repeat, that has not been clear, okay?
Sure.
Okay, we need to clarify that, okay? Because it is an issue that is hanging in there. He said, we said, they said, we hired Frank Architects to do this, okay? It's not up to us. In other words, you need to go and figure it out.
Yes, I will, absolutely.
Okay.
I got it.
Now, how many is the total that we need?
We don't need it right now.
No, how many is the total
Well, to
that
me,
are needed?
700, 1,700 and 1,700.
Now, another question. The number of parking spaces are in reference to the building size or
Correct.
what? Okay, in other
Yes.
words, a building size with X number of square feet?
It's the building
meets-
size, the different functions, and in this case, you'd be working with the shared parking ordinance because you have different activities happening at the same site. So we would work this through with the city of Laredo with their shared parking ordinance, which I think they instituted it about 2-3 years ago.
A couple of more questions relating to parking spaces and compliance with the city. Is this a state mandated law, or is this a city ordinance according to zoning?
It's here, it's part of the city of Laredo Land Development
Okay,
Code.
it's a city
Yes, sir.
ordinance, okay. I think that somebody said a little while ago that the city could amend the ordinance for special events.
Yes, they can.
Thank you. What's
That's
it?
what they said.
Or we can use their streets to park, the city streets.
Yes, it's
Which we're doing
a
right now,
variance, or you come up
even at
with
football games.
a MOU, of course.
Once a year.
So what are we gonna do? Where do we go from here? No, pues ya te dio las three options.
Should we gonna have to ink it?
He's gonna read it again.
He's not hearing it.
No, what about 1 and 2?
I was there.
Hay espacio acá.
Well, with
Pero
Mr.
pues, si
Martinez,
no la
with
hace,
two,
then-
you're right. With two, it has exactly what you have in one, and two, they're just adding
Yeah.
the UI compliant. They're putting all of one in there.
But in 2, they're also adding to the auditorium, a whole bunch
Right,
of
which is
space.
what we want.
You're tearing
UI
down the
compliance.
walls from the auditorium and making a brand-new auditorium.
But I think we bring it and put it on the.
No, we would do additions to the audit. We wouldn't tear it down. We'd work with the existing building, and we would
Okay.
do additions to it.
Okay.
The auditorium is fine.
Yes,
What, we just need to add
yes, sir.
some bathrooms, not the whole, all the way around it.
If you do not want to be UIL compliant, that's correct. That would be the first option. If you want to be,
UIL compliance.
because that's how you can have competitive meets there, where you can have various schools come from different places
Yeah,
and.
okay, that's
Yeah,
in
that's up to
our-
you.
In our conscience, I mean, what we feel is necessary.
Yes, sir. That's up to you.
I bring it bring it on a motion A, B, and C, and let the board vote.
So
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
we will wait for the new drawings with the appearance of the Chamber of Commerce building.
Yes, sir. It will reappear.
And look into the possibility of that additional parking on that little green.
Okay.
I would think.
West of Landecker.
Mr. Martinez, Dr. Nelson, Dr. Nelson, that it be that in the proposal B, that we add those things for the long jump and triple jump in B, because that's what I like. C, I think is too, I don't think that we should knock down the building, but maybe C, as Mr. Pettis said, is keeping the structure of the Civic Center whole, doing the renovation, and maybe on the opposite side, building a administration building, and bring that as a C, so we can look at it to see if it's.
And we can work on different options still.
Just to
We can come up with new
if it's
options.
worth it. If not,
D, E, and
go to
F.
B.
or-
Right.
Sure.
Is that all right?
We
Yes,
have
sir.
all the ABC.
We can go the whole alphabet, sure. No, we'll be happy to,
So we're not gonna
Prepare
do
that.
anything right now?
No, this is just a
Because we
workshop.
can- Yeah, it's a workship for us.
Yes.
Right, so we've had a good discussion,
workshop.
and we're definitely going to go follow up on everything that was said in items 1, 2, and 3.
That's better.
thank you.
Consider all three of them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
I
any
want to
other?
also recognize lovely Mrs. Viviana Frank,
Yes.
Frank Architects as well. We appreciate her being here, and she's been instrumental in the development of this as well, right, Mr. Rodnowski? Absolutely, okay, well said. Also, Ms. Ayala joined us. She was
Oh, yes. Thank you.
fulfilling her civic duty with jury, with court.
Oh, really?
And so she got here as quick as she could, but Mr. Manoa and I will update her and, as well as our federal programs director on our conversations regarding special revenues.
Any other discussion on the items,
Before we
Mr.
adjourn,
Garcia?
I just want to wish all the kids in our district, a Halloween, happy Halloween Saturday. Be careful, look both ways, use